Hello, welcome folks. How are you doing? How are you doing? Can you see and hear us fine? Please give us some emoji thumbs ups if you can
Yes,
hear and
please,
see us
please type
fine.
GM in the chat. Please type GM in the chat if you can hear us loud and clear. Spam the chat with
GM.
GM. Yeah.
Awesome. It's Aditya again, and I have with me Abhay Jani. Abhay, open the chat, please. Abhay, my co-host for today.
Thanks, thanks, Arjun.
Let's let's get this rolling. So excited. So many GMs, even in the evening, be it evening, night, afternoon. GM is the way to go.
Yeah,
Super excited for today's session. Let me just give me 1 minute to kick things
it's
off.
always
Let me
GM. It's
know.
always GM. Yeah.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yep. We'll wait for a couple of minutes for more people to join in and sign up. People who are live from YouTube, we also hear you. Shua, Naveen, Weber, Pratmesh, Ashish, GM, everyone. Yeah.
GM everyone. People joining from YouTube, please hit the like button. That is how we reach more people. That is how we share with your friends. Oh,
Sure.
we are seeing a thumbs up in Hermit as well. Yes, please go to YouTube and like the stream so that we could reach more people. We can have more people joining in the product house. Are we in a metaverse already? Just in about 5 minutes. Just in about
Yep.
5 minutes.
Let's wait for a couple of minutes before we just start the session. You also
Abhay,
check
should we have
schedule
some
link.
music maybe?
Yep.
Abhay, let's get going. We
Yep.
have enough folks already. I think lots of you have joined in, and it's great. It's so great to see everyone again. Super happy that this is going so well. It's been almost 20 days since we started this, and more than five amazing sessions so far. Absolutely loving the energy and enthusiasm that you all bring in each live session we do. This is a Wednesday evening that we are doing. All of you must have had a long work day and still joining us to learn and grow together in the Web3 space. So super excited to bring all of these sessions to you. Thanks for all the support and encouragement that you all show us week on week, day on day in all of these sessions. Wouldn't have been possible without our amazing partners, Polygon and AlphaWave, and a bunch of ecosystem partners who have constantly supported us in everything that we do. Without them, wouldn't be possible to put up a great show every time. So thanks to all our ecosystem partners, Polygon and AlphaWave, for all the support. Before we get started, quick house rules, keeping up with the product house. I really hope by now you definitely must have joined Discord. If not, what are you waiting for? Ayush will share the link in the chat. Make sure you join the Discord if you haven't yet, because that is where all our announcements, all our giveaways, and everything that we do happen. So you'll stay updated with us there. And on Twitter, of course, most of you must already be on our Twitter by now. But if not, go follow us there. We put out sneak peeks and all the announcements there. We have Today we have announced about a mystery guest speaker. So please go there, guess who the speaker might be on our closing session, and you might win something. So we keep doing such little somethings every once in a while. So
Yes.
make sure you
And
are
this is
updated.
This is actually something that many of you may not have expected. So go to TPH Twitter, just put a name or put a guess what who do you think this person is going to be. But that session is going to be a blast. Exciting as an announcement coming to all of your way. Yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. And make sure you join these live sessions. This is where you get to interact with all of the amazing speakers that we bring in for you, all the amazing mentors. You get to ask them questions directly, interact with them on the chat. So make sure you join in these sessions that happen on AirMeet. We'll put out the recordings, but that will happen at the end of the cohort. So don't worry if you miss out on anything, but really, really encourage you to join these live sessions. And before we get rolling, like every time, we have to announce bounty winners. We can't move ahead without announcing our bounty winners.
Yeah.
Abhay, would you like to kick this off?
Sure. So for the session that we had on the DeFi with Sid from Onjuno, we already have the results ready. We have Chaitra, Natasha, Priyansh, Avi, and Yash Desale. Congrats to all five of them. You have won the bounty for the DeFi 101 session conducted by Sid from Onjuno. You can expect a DM or we reaching out to you very, very soon. Along with the bounty from this session, On Juno has also extended an opportunity for interview to directly working at On Juno. So, in case any of you are interested, then also grab that opportunity as well. On Juno is doing really, really good stuff. And in case any of you are actually currently available, present in the chat, just drop a hi. Yash, Priyansh, Avi, Natasha, or Chaitra. Yeah, congrats.
Absolutely.
And for the next session that we hosted on DAO, the winners will be announced tomorrow. So do come tomorrow also to see if you are one of the bounty winners for that session as well. For this week, we already have bounty for $500 worth bounty. All you need to do is go to Twitter, attend the entire session, create a thread, tag 0xTPH, tag Polygon Studios, tag Sign, and write down your learnings in the best way possible. You can put GIFs, you can put memes, you can put sketch notes, you can put anything that you like, but make it creative so that you can be selected as the winner. Yeah.
Yep. And thanks so much, folks, for putting in so much effort into creating these threads every week in every session. A lot of you have been constantly taking notes and sharing it on Twitter, LinkedIn. This not only helps you summarize the session, but also helps spread the learnings with everyone else. So kudos to each one of you. Kudos to everyone who takes all the effort in making these threads and takes all the notes. Make sure you continue doing this. And yeah, congrats to all the bounty winners. Let's move on to today's session. Are you
Yeah.
ready?
Yeah.
Folks, please show some love if you are ready. Please give us some hearts, thumbs ups, likes if you are on YouTube, smash that like button. Awesome, awesome. Please welcome our mentor for today, Sai. Sai, bringing Sai onto stage in just a minute. But Sai is probably one of the best people I know in the Web3 space. My go-to person in Web3 and otherwise. Sai has had a crazy journey so far. I was in backstage. I was telling him that it would be impossible to summarize his journey in such a short span. But he is currently an advisor to Polygon. Initially founded Scapic, which was acquired by Flipkart, founded Cope Studio, which was acquired by Polygon, and so many other things that he'll talk about today. Personally, super excited to learn from Sai like I usually do. Please make sure you take a lot of notes and welcome Sai with a lot of emoji applauses, folks. Hello, Sai. How are you doing today?
Hey Adi, hey Abhay, thank you so much for having me in, guys. I think the learning has happened on Twitter way too often from the product folk side to this front. So first up, for every one of you guys who has usually made those notes and put it out there, trust me, I sort of read each one of them through these sessions and some of the ones that were before as well. So from a fan to perhaps a way to contribute back to the community, super glad that I'm in this and possibly my goal today is to have the most freewheeling, candid, informal chat that we can about the metaverse and sort of look through the looking glass in a lot of ways, right? In terms of what the hell is this whole thing up to? Where are we really going? And hopefully, in between all of this, have a couple of laughs at our own costs as well as at the costs of where the technology piece is, and also be inspired enough in order to attempt something to do things here. But really excited. I do think that the growth that Product Folks has typically had is very crypto centric in terms of getting out there to the moon in itself. But rock and roll when you guys think we're good to go.
Awesome, Sai. We can go ahead. By the way, everyone is asking a setup tour from you. Setup OP is going on in the
Yes.
chat. So
Background OP, setup OP.
Sai OP, background OP, setup OP, all of this
No,
is going on. So
this is at the Cope offices, by the way. So I think the whole room here was done in such a way that it was sort of a podcasting room completely. And then the rest of the entire office sort of has video rooms, and then there is one game room, etc. So we try to keep things interesting here. We are located in HSR layout. If you are a Web3 guy or just a person who's interested in the technologies here, we've got a bunch of Oculus Quests. We've got enough to talk about what on-chain products are. We're a part of Polygon, got acquired, and hence anything which is centric to what the Indian story around what a chain can do in terms of L2. Please feel free to drop by. The coffee is mediocre. The conversations are awesome. The chances of finding Adi and Suhas there are pretty high as well.
the closest thing to Metaverse in Bangalore is Scope's office. So please do
Oh, yeah.
drop by. You'll find fantastic people, like Sai said, and they are amazing hosts. When we were in Bangalore, worked out of their office, fantastic set of folks. So yeah, do ping Sai on Twitter, pretty active. We'll share more about that as well. But Sai, we are good to roll for today's session. Over to you.
Awesome. Thanks a ton, guys. Let me just go ahead, fire up my screen so that we've got things good to roll. And if one of you can confirm that we are set,
Perfect.
I think we're in order.
We are set.
Perfect.
Yep.
Guys, first up, on a midweek hump day Wednesday evening, if we are carving the time out in order to come in and listen to a guy talking about outlandish technology that's perhaps a little while out there, thank you. Right, like I think it is a testament to the fact that we are in a space that's deeply exciting. We are also building things because there is a true belief that there is a path from getting from where we are in the world today and sort of getting to where good product thinking can move us to. Between now and say the next foreseeable future, which could be in months or years, but I really think months because at the pace at which things are moving forward, I am optimistic more than anything else. So today, my goal is to perhaps go through the fundamentals, right? Like the absolute basics or the 101s in terms of broadly understanding what do we mean by a metaverse when we talk about it. What are the constituent parts to it? What are the ways that we can get to realistically bringing that vision to life, and opportunities, not just from a product perspective, but from an entrepreneurial perspective as well, in terms of if you're a builder or a product manager, how could you possibly view and slice the cat in terms of moving this forward. Quick intro so that I don't forget my manners. My journey started as an accidental entrepreneur back in the days. Used to build an education platform that was gobbled up by a bigger education player when I was an engineering undergrad. So it took me 4 years of engineering to realize I wanted to do something else. Built an hyperlocal company, which kind of failed. Learned a lot from that. Graduated from Stanford, got back to India, and started building a AR VR company. We didn't call it Metaverse then; it was still AR VR, and that was called Scapic. So Scapic started in about late 2017, early 2018. And between 2018 and 2020, we built like the Webflow for virtual and augmented reality experiences. We saw commerce as a good fit, and which meant that as nearly as soon as the pandemic hit, we were acquired by Flipkart in order to build through the metaverse strategy as well as what core computer vision and augmented reality there is. Since then, I then backed a company called Cope, which was a venture studio, a startup that builds startups specifically in the metaverse side and the Web3 space, which was recently acquired by Polygon, and by virtue of which I also advised Polygon and Polygon Studios on what could happen there. To this, I'm always supported by some of the most passionate folks about the space, both in this call as well as in the offices. So there is just an intrinsic amount of joy about figuring what the hell the metaverse is. And that's really where I think we should get started, right? Like, what in the world is the metaverse thing all about? And in order to sort of look at where we are going with respect to the metaverse, it's probably useful to set the premise, right? In terms of what could the metaverse encompass in an ideal state. Now, broadly speaking, if you want a complex definition, I think Matthew Wall does insane with this, which is real-time rendered 3D virtual worlds, which can be experienced synchronously and persistently There's a lot that's going on here, right? This is really what is the most adorned definition of the metaverse right now as we speak. It's very cool, but also very intimidating, right? What does this mean? It's a bunch of really cool and nice sounding words, but let's put it simply, right? The metaverse is really a place and a piece and a slice of time, right? The slice of time is this is more important than that, right? The time that you spend in front of your phones is more important than the time you spend taking a walk in Common Park. And similarly, the metaverse is an extension of that. It is a space and a place and a time where you can live, shop, work, interact, have fun, recreational or commerce, and do all of that in an interconnected 3D world, right? And that's really the interconnection part is why people call this the evolution of the internet in itself, which is, think of web pages, right? Interlinked, interconnected, hyperlinks are sort of doing everything in terms of connecting you to various parts of the web. Think of hyperlinks to become portals, right? So the metaverse is really an embodiment of the internet where you jump in. You're an avatar, you bobble around, but the most important and the most exciting part is it's a complete reimagination of what the internet is, right? And that is sort of a lot of fun purely because to get there are a lot of layers that you need to unlock in order to make this metaverse a reality. So today we're going to spend some time understanding what these layers are, right? So let's apply some framework around how do you even view the metaverse as compared to walking through just the terminologies or something. So I want to spend some time taking a more product centric path today in terms of what are the layers of the metaverse and how do we sort of bring it to life. Very quickly, let's also be sure to understand what the metaverse is not or how is it different from the internet, so that as we start discussing about this, we clearly understand what's going on. On the internet, it's links and content. On the metaverse, you are the link, you are the active participant. A metaverse is an embodiment, right? Like a desktop or a smartphone is a very limited way to experience it. The true format of what the metaverse is here, right? In augmented reality and virtual reality devices. That's really where you go from a spectator, which is what the internet is, to an active participant in terms of what the metaverse can be. Which is why we take a lot of these gaming properties and we keep calling that the metaverse. Like, why do we call Fortnite one, Roblox one, Minecraft one? These are all virtual worlds, right? But the reason why we give them the metaverse identity is because we are present in that experience and we do a lot of things in terms of commerce or in terms of entertainment while we're at it, right? So that's really where the internet stops and the metaverse starts. An embodiment goes more towards the metaverse side, while an adaptation of content is more towards the internet side. Perfect, right? Now that we sort of know where the lines blur between the internet and the metaverse, what are the layers of the metaverse in itself? And this is perhaps the part that I wish to spend the most time on today. If you sort of really look at the metaverse, I can split that out to 7 odd layers that are super important in order for us to realize this. Are we today out there and actively experiencing the metaverse? Not quite. Now, why do I say that? Is if we are not going to be doing this call over a video conferencing tool, right? All of us should have theoretically been doing this call over Facebook Horizon or Spatial. We're not doing that, and we're not doing that for a reason. We're not doing that because a lot of these layers have not been solved for yet. We're getting there, but it requires more work to be put in. So if I were to dissect those, let's look at it from infrastructure, your human interface, or basically your UX UI side. How are you making decentralization happen? Spatial computing, which is 3D engines and what is going on there. Creators and what role they have to play between this. How do you surface content? And what are the kind of experiences we can build around this? We are practically attempting to build a world theoretically in a digital realm from ground up. And that's no easy task, right? That's going to involve not just one company, but a collective or a crew. And that crew is possibly going to have billions, tens, if not hundreds of billions of dollars being poured into it in order to bring this vision to life. These 7 layers are probably a starting point for you to think and sort of break down problem statements in terms of what is relevant, what needs to be solved, and how do we take it forward. So let's get rolling, right? What is the first layer we're talking about? Infrastructure. A big part of this whole metaverse game has not been solved for in terms of pure raw computing and connectivity. So what infrastructure means is, think about the game that you play, World of Warcraft, right? Like how many of you here must have been Dota players, right? Back in the day. If when you were playing Warcraft 3 or when you were playing Dota, the engine which was rendering the map could not even do more than a few MB at one point of time. We've since then gone to the Skyrim days, where you can render very complex maps, and then to the God of War days, where your maps are incredibly detailed. But now you're talking about world scale, right? You're talking about completely persistent layers which are going to be crunched and rendered not just for you, but multiple hundreds and millions of other participants on a persistent way that this is happening. Almost like the internet, but like imagine a 3D engine rendered version of the internet on one side, which is why GPUs need to become order of magnitude better than where they are right now. The second part is, even if you crunch and render that kind of content, how do you send it to the end person? You send it to the end person with connectivity. Today, what is happening is a lot of the processing is happening at a device level. This can be on your glasses or on your phones. The problem with that is your processor heats up, and that's not a great idea, especially if you're strapping something to your face, right? So you don't want to do a lot of this processing locally. What you rather want is a way for you to stream a lot of this information to the device. And the latency has to be small enough that when I move around and do things when I'm wearing a VR headset, it should be easy enough for me to refresh that data. That's really where 5G and Wi-Fi 6 are the two things that really become super important in doing low latency communications in order to realize this vision of the metaverse. So at an infra level, to compute the data and communicate the data, we require so much work in order to get us there. The second after that is okay, sure, like we do those parts, but how does the metaverse look and feel, right? That's where human interfaces come in. The human interface part has two layers to it. The first one is what I call as the arc of computing, right? The arc of computing is a simple concept. We've gone from mainframes to desktops, desktops to laptops, laptops to smartphones. And every time we have changed in our computing format, it's taken us about 12 to 15 years, right? And there's no reason to believe that we're going to stop with the smartphone. In fact, there's all the reason to believe that every company wants to innovate the next big thing after the smartphone. So, what are our options? We literally have only two options right now, and the third in a small point of time after this. The two options right now are voice based computing, which is through speakers around you, and spatial computing, which is to throw intelligence onto your face. The third is brain computing interfaces, which is BCI, and Neuralink, and all of that is a little while away. So I'm going to park that for the time being. But these are potentially the only ways computing can evolve between where it is right now to where we want it to be in the next era. We've already tried voice, right? Like Siri is hit or miss. Your Google Home is right now a timer and a Spotify player, right? So it's got like a limited set of skills that it's exceptionally good at. So the next obvious push here is to how do we make information permeable in our day-to-day lives? And that answer is right here, right? The glasses we wear sort of become a great gateway drug into putting information right here, which is contextual, which is useful, and which actually provides you value. We already do this, right? Like every time there is a notification, we look on down on our phone, we look on our smartwatch. We are already beasts of behavior in terms of catering to what a digital device wants from us. A smart glass makes that very contextual and pops it right here. Now, there are two variants of this. There's one called virtual reality, and the other called augmented reality. Now, what's virtual reality and augmented reality? Very quickly, think of virtual reality as you slip on glasses and I transport you to, say, the base of Everest. Take augmented reality. I would determine the three people who are next to you in the conference room and tell you their names, their Twitter handles, and what was the last tweet that they had put out. Hopefully, it's about product folks in this case. But that's really the difference here. You're able to attach content to your real world life in augmented reality, and you're able to completely transport the human into a digital world with virtual reality. Now, when we talk about the metaverse, both options are actually possible. While you all might have heard of, the VR narrative again and again, which is an escapist realm, right? Like you're able to completely zap and transport a person into this newer field. Augmented reality is as much metaversal in its own right, which is a layer of intelligence on top of anything that you do on a day-to-day basis. You already see this with Google Maps, right, or Apple Maps, where it has live directions that sort of augment on top of what's going on. Some of your Snapchat filters actually take really popular landmarks like the Taj Mahal or the India Gate or the Flatiron building in New York and make some really cool effects out of that. Augmented reality is more like an intelligence layer on top of our current world. Virtual reality takes you to the virtual world. Now, with that comes a whole new host of human interface issues. How are haptics going to work? How is voice-based computing going to work there? How are gestures going to possibly work through? I think these are some of the areas that are going to become crucial for the way that you're going to go about solving for once I put these glasses on, what's the easiest way for me to get to the metaverse? Now, trust me, if you guys have checked out the Decentralands, the sandboxes of the world, these are all products which are metaverse products right now as we speak. What you would notice is crypto and the metaverse, while really cool to talk about, have a ton of human interface problems. So there is just potential opportunity for designers and product thinkers here to come in and solve for so much of what is going to take for millions to start using the metaverse on a day-to-day basis. Now, since I said decentralization with Sandbox and Decentraland, let's go move to decentralization itself as the third layer that we're talking about here. In decentralization, we're talking about the blockchain, but not just the blockchain, right? You also got to do something called edge computing. What edge computing basically says is, look, the glasses can't do all the hard work. Let me sort of have devices on the edge, which is sort of between the cloud and your on-prem processing, and you're able to do a bunch of the processing there, probably a node that you have there or a femto with your 5G network that you have there, and that's able to do a lot of the crunching and simply stream the data to your device. So that's on the computing side. On the blockchain side, the metaverse is inherently, like I said, like the internet, right? What is the internet? The internet's a collection of web pages that all have agreed that HTML is the protocol by which they're going to talk to each other, right? Similarly, what happens with the metaverse is a bunch of these 3D worlds will come together and start agreeing with each other that there are some ways, manners, and protocols with which they would engage with each other. So if I'm an avatar, how do I go from world A, which is say the product house and the 3D world that the product house is, to world B, which is say a Gucci store, to world C, which is say the Chinnaswamy Stadium and hence cricket match that's going on there. And the way that I move around means that my avatar has to be consistent. My avatar has to represent me. My controls and the way I behave with a lot of these systems have to be thorough. And the blockchain helps a lot there. Decentralization means that a bunch of companies can come together, operate at a protocol level, an application level, and most importantly, sell you things like NFTs and land parcels, where you would be able to purchase them and have true provenance and ownership over that asset class at all points of time. This layer is perhaps the most fundamentally exciting one from the standpoint of realizing the vision of the metaverse as a decentralized world, which is or a decentralized interconnected bunch of worlds which can come together and still work nicely with each other. The next part after that is, sure, we've spoken about infra, we've spoken about the computing that's going to get us there, we've spoken about the human computing interfaces that's going to help us, as well as the blockchain, which is going to enable a lot of this. Now let's assume that we've got the device looks and feels great. The device is now decentralized from a software standpoint.
Sai, just 1 minute. A couple of folks on the chat were saying that if you could maybe explain the decentralization layer a bit more in detail, maybe we can cover that and move forward. What do you think?
For sure. I have a few more slides to back up on the decentralization part as well, because I do want to deep dive on it. So perhaps what I would do is spend a little bit more time specifically on this segment as we finish with the 7, So, and also open up some time to make that really interactive, because I do understand this might be a bit of a doozy. So quickly touching on this again, think of it as, today, the way the web sort of came together was because a bunch of pages were built out in Web 1, right? I'm talking about when everything was still Craigslist and Netscape. Uh, Everyone agreed that there is a basic set of foundational rules that we have. Now, when you look at the metaverse, think of all the layers that you have to build out. How does, let's take the AirPods case, right? Like, think of this as a 3D object, a 3D object that an avatar is holding in. And this 3D object is now sold from one person to the other in the metaverse, right? Fairly simple in terms of how we ran with it. Now, this avatar has to be consistent between one metaverse player, let's say Decentraland, and the other metaverse player, saying Facebook Horizon. The object has to remain true, or the object has to retain provenance in terms of how does it look, feel, function, does it open and animate like this, and what are the properties of the object itself as we make that purchase happen. The third is which is you got to have stateful 3D objects, and you got to have stateful ways of holding transactions on top of it. Which is, if I make a sale happen, I wish to truly own the object, because in the metaverse, the problem is it's almost like your real world, right? In terms of identity. Tomorrow, what if a service shuts down? Tomorrow, what if Google wakes up and, like the way they shut down Google Chat, Allo, Duo, or Allo, and a bunch of other products out there? What if Google's metaverse product just hits the graveyard? You don't want to lose all of your identity with it, right? So that's why decentralization means that there is true ownership over what are the assets that you have bought and proved all for yourself. This can be at an avatar level, this can be at a land level, this can be at an object level or a utility level, as well as at an experience level. For example, if I buy a ticket to go visit a Justin Bieber concert, and this Justin Bieber concert is happening in its own 3D world, right? And when I exist in that 3D world, I wish for my avatar to be anonymized in a certain way, because I don't want the rest of you judging me that I am a Justin Bieber fan. Now, the moment I'm able to finish with that and then get back to my original metaverse or my original sort of space of choice, this stateful nature is best to keep it decentralized. Now, I got really in like specific examples here for a reason, but broadly think of where decentralization is useful at is to have currencies in order to move things around in the metaverse, which is coins become the actual currencies in the metaverse. Non-fungible tokens become things in the metaverse. Anything that I buy and sell become NFTs. Anything that I buy and sell with become crypto. And anything that I use in the metaverse in terms of ownership will be recorded transparently on a chain. So the chain layer, the token layer, and the NFT layer hence become indispensably important for the vision of the metaverse that we're trying to realize here. Right after, looking at spatial computing here, this is more along the 3D engines as well as geospatial mapping. What does geospatial mapping mean? Interestingly, companies like Google and Apple are already out there trying to build out a complete 3D replication of your current world today as we speak. Don't take my word for it, right? Like, load up Apple Maps or load up Google Maps and perhaps sift through San Francisco or sift through New York, so a slightly more populous city. What you will find is all these cities have been mapped not just from a drone footage level 3D, but at a street level 3D at at what is called a point cloud. A point cloud is basically a reconstruction of your entire world as a 3D file. Right now, you might be wondering, holy smokes, that's a lot of data, that's a lot of work. It actually means that there is a car with a LiDAR sensor that is equipped, like just like the way Google Earth used to do it in the past. This LiDAR sensor enabled car is actually bobbing around the city, capturing the whole city in high fidelity 3D. So the reason they're doing that is, if you create a digital twin of the world at this point of time, imagine the kind of data that you can superimpose on top of it. Which means, as I walk through Times Square, if a company has all the 3D data of exactly how Times Square looks and is existing at a mesh level, I can superimpose any ad that I want to, right? It need not be a billboard ad there. Or I can remove, or imagine an ad blocker that is in augmented reality, right? I understand how the 3D space is. I understand where the billboards occur, and hence I can completely block those ads out. Now, at its core, just like the way mapping became infrastructure that was important for companies like Uber, Swiggy, and anything that was at a delivery level using mapping technology. Imagine the next wave of companies: self driving cars, drones, augmented reality companies, geospatial use cases that are coming through. All of these will start depending on 3D data of your world in order to do something really cool. There is already an arms race out there in order to capture a lot of this info in 3D. Now, so you got 3D info, you got the games that are built and experiences that are built on top, the devices you use, and the decentralization layer on top of it. All of this is kind of useless if it's not sticky or if it's not fun, right? We keep forgetting that people are going to spend time in the metaverse not because they have to, but because they want to, right? Like in the early days, you really need to give people a reason to spend time there, and that's really where the creator economy part comes in. You're going to have a lot of people generating some incredible designs, content, assets, commerce. And I think it's going to start with commerce and content. So think of this as a layer, right? Computing changes, content changes with the computing, commerce will change because the content is new. And what does that mean? Is every time that the computing device changes, the way that the content is represented on that device will evolve. Right? Like think of how we went from Flickr on a desktop interface to Instagram on a mobile interface, and then from Instagram to say a TikTok, right? And when the content changes, the commerce changes, right? Like live video has become a big way to buy something now. Like social commerce has become a huge thing, and all of this happens because the content format has effectively changed. Now, similarly, the computing will change again, the content will change again, which is now going to be more 3D centric, more metaverse centric. And the commerce in turn will change on top of this. So imagine the next bunch of hustlers out there from a creator economy standpoint to perhaps be metaverse folks, right? They'll be able to build, sell, market, and get a bunch of things out there for you in a completely 3D world, right? Like stand-up shows, for all you know, can possibly take the metaverse side, and it's already happening. SNL is perhaps doing a couple of shows on 3D worlds as we speak. The sixth layer is discovery. All of this again is kind of useless if you don't have a place to discover it. Now, if you notice, this is a lot more like around how we use our smartphones, right? Ad networks, how we're going to have stores where you download a bunch of metaverse assets or worlds. How do you move from one world to the other and actually surface the content that you're going to consume? And the last is the experiences. Again, this has to be very well thought through, because if your games are not fun, your concerts are not fun, the movies that you watch in a virtual reality or an augmented reality medium, or the things that you buy there are not engaging, no one's going to stick around, right? So, and that really encompasses the last layer, which is the experience layer, and how all of this comes through together in terms of building out a metaverse like this. Oof, that is a lot there to unpack, right? And this is really why the metaverse is both fluidic in definition, scary in vision because of how much work needs to go behind it, but also exciting, right? Because so much of this is unsolved that every place that you look, uh, you can possibly see potential to do something and build something. It's honestly your oyster. You can play, you can take a course, you can accessorize your avatar, you can build a completely virtual brand, you can use social interactions and collaboration, you can use commerce, you can be productive. Companies are already doing a bunch of their meetings as such. And then you can do stunts, right? Like this whole wedding thing that we saw in the metaverse and all of that. So I think there are a lot. There's honestly an ocean to boil in this case. But the seven layers, perhaps, hopefully, gives you a little bit of a view in terms of how you might want to look at the world that you try or you attempt to build or you're attempting to be a part of. Quick pause. Would you want me to dwell on some part specific? Open the floor up for a couple of questions before I move on to the next slide. How do we do this?
I think, Sai, what we can do is maybe walk through the next few slides, and then we'll have some dedicated time for Q&A where we'll have a very freewheeling conversation about all of this. So far, there are no repetitive questions in the chat. That was the only the infrastructure layer and the decentralization part that you explained again was super helpful. So for now, I think we are good to move forward, and then we'll come back to questions again.
Oh, that's awesome. So with this, now you've sort of seen a lot of this footage, right? Even before you came here, this was from the Meta announcement. We're seeing a lot of this science fiction like representation of what the metaverse is, and this is not very far off, by the way. Photorealistic avatars are very close to being a reality. Social interactions like this can actually be brought to life. A lot of what Facebook showed or Meta showed is not too far off, right? But to get there is really how we need to solve for those more intrinsic problems that we just saw, right? And the metaverse is also being built on seemingly cool technology that is attracting a tremendous amount of action as we go through it. Crypto and blockchain being the top of the food chain, right? But besides that, there's actually a lot more that's happening as well, right? Like the cloud to edge movement in terms of how AWS as well as GCP is thinking about where the edge comes into play here is a huge trend shifting towards how distributed computing, even though centralized, can actually evolve through. AR and VR has been around for a while, right? It is widely rumored that Apple's next inevitable computing category, which will probably launched either by the end of this year or the next year, is going to be an augmented or virtual reality headset, which means that we are at the era where you remember these PDAs or personal digital assistants that we all used to use before the iPhones came and absolutely killed it all. We're at the PDA phase of AR, VR, and the metaverse and the blockchain right now. It is primitive, but you see the potential that this is actually going to lead up to something a lot more interesting. Almost like how netbooks, if you guys remember, right? Like might be a young audience here, but there used to be a thing called netbooks, which were supposed to be the next cool thing, right? Like built on a whole new operating system. Intel was supposed to, lead the charge. What happened? An iPad launched and practically killed that whole thing. We're waiting for a killer device in order to come in and take over a lot of the action that's happening in silos right now as we speak. And this killer device, in terms of a glass, is getting closer and closer than ever. How close? Think of it as last year, Meta sold about 8 million Oculus Quests out there. For context, that's more than the sales of Xboxes in that year as well. Which means you're already at a point where the virtual reality slash metaverse hardware industry is bigger than the Xbox industry right now as we speak, at least from a hardware lens. Now, how do we take that momentum forward and go from 8 million people to the next 100 million people? And that's really where so much of the work here is going to come through together. And the best gateway drug to get us there is gaming, right? Why the hell is it gaming? Why is it not commerce? Or why is it on social media? Why is it not anything else? It's because gaming is inherently 3D and it's inherently engaging. Businesses can convert gaming to gaming revenue, right? EA Sports has been doing this to our wallets on a yearly basis, right? And we've all seen this happen too often, where you're going to move from NFTs, ads, franchisee loyalty, subscriptions. Games are inherently built for a tokenized economy, right? And the metaverse is simply going to take the tokenization part, and smash it together in a 3D world where sporting and games become almost the perfect storm for you to get started with what is possible in this metaverse in itself. So now, if you sort of come into an after party side here, traditional structures will actually get a lot better, right? Like learning will sort of be a lot more interesting. Healthcare will be a lot more interesting, but that's all yoga babble right now, right? Like honestly, these are cool, but this is not what's going to make the next 10 million people wear a headset. A really, really compelling game that is then having the conduits of learning, doing, socializing is really where all the action is going to happen. And the game itself can become serious, right? Virtual, which is what Facebook is doing, right? Facebook is trying to build the logic of a game with the seriousness of a productivity tool, which is what Facebook Horizon is. And those virtual spaces is really where most of this action is going to go forward. Outside that, there is a simple way that you can look at the metaverse in terms of broad mega trends that are coming through together. I think these are going to be ways that are more on the social side or on the tech side. These are the only two levers that are needed to be cracked for the metaverse to be successful from here. So on the social side, you got to find a reason to put that headset on. On the technological side, you need to find a reason to make that headset better and better and better till a point where it's a no-brainer, like the AirPods we have, to just accessorize our phones and keep going. The other one is, of course, the blockchain adoption. I think we're at a point and at a cusp where the ability for on-chain products to sort of have this completely digital native spaces is so high that the metaverse is going to enjoy a lot of the tailwinds from that as it sort of moves forward. And of course, you guys must have seen the NFT and the smart and the Web3 101 so far in. So I'm going to skip through that part and sort of look at where the creator economy is itself right now. We're sort of just getting started in terms of participation, but I think we can get to some sort of activity within the next 12 to 18 months. Besides that, there is a fundamental shift which is broader than the metaverse, which itself is around the ownership side, right? So the metaverse simply is going to take this and put this on steroids and keep moving this further. And why is decentralization important? Is because of something like this. The money that you're making the metaverse work on is going to be inherently crypto. The users are also going to have a ton of control over their identity, their land, and their data. And the applications that you build on top of these metaverse platforms will not be owned by any centralized company, but be built on cryptography from day one, which means that the metaverse is almost like the land on top of which you do some really cool stuff at. And that in itself is going to be inherently decentralized. So how's the interest going in here? Wild, right? We've seen just enough companies that are starting to jump in and starting to do things as a part of this right now as we speak. We can pick up any one of these examples and keep talking about it in length, but I think probably not an hour is enough in order to get us there. In terms of implications, I think if you're a product manager, this is probably the best way to think about this, right? The best ways to build a product for the metaverse right now is going to be helping new customers do a job that others are already doing out there, right? Like in terms of if I were to sort of basically look at a 2x2 in a lot of ways, because we all love to do 2x2s in our field. Typically, what we want to do in the metaverse right now is go after an existing use case and enhance that in the metaverse, or go after a completely new blue field use case out there that is going to be exciting. So as you think about your ideas, as you think about the things you wish to do and the way you wish to go about the metaverse, what I really think could be useful for you to take away from today's conversation is the 7 layers which are going to constitute the growth of what the metaverse is, as well as a 2x2 in terms of the jobs that need to be done versus the customers that you're trying to tend to. Once you have this in place, whatever it is, whether your company is looking to adopt a metaverse strategy, whether you're looking to deep dive into the metaverse yourself, or if you're looking to get going with respect to what might happen in terms of opportunities in which will open up for you to build something that we can boil the ocean here, like I said. So quick pause again. I think I'm super done with my slides and would love to, probably field a couple of questions and treat a free-reading conversation on this as well.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Sai. Many folks are already saying that this is probably the best session they've heard so far in the series. So thanks a ton for breaking it down so well and explaining it so nicely. Yeah, love the session. Best session for sure. Thank you. Great session. Sai OP, all of it is going on chat. Sai OP for sure, folks.
Too kind there, to be honest, like as always.
Awesome, awesome. Let's take a couple of questions, right? I'll kick this off maybe by asking a very fundamental question. We have been hearing about metaverse since many years now, right? It's not something that we have heard about it now. A lot of companies are already doing some tremendous work there, but we still don't see it around us, right? We don't still consider it as a very viable interface or something that we interact with so often. What do you think will be the tipping point, or what will be that inflection point where we'll consider, say, metaverse as one of the things that connects our daily lives in many ways, right? You mentioned about gaming, you mentioned about 8 million Oculus Quests being sold. Do you think we are near achieving a state where this all to virtual real is fully blended, right? How far away from that? Combining two questions again, but would love to hear your thoughts.
For sure. I'll sort of split Adi's question into two parts, right? The first part is why the hell should we believe you this time, right? And the simple as that, which is, look, I think big tech has bullshitted long enough saying this is the year, this is the year, this is the year. I think in VR especially, there used to be this joke saying, when is VR going to arrive? 2 years from now, right? Like this always used to be the case. And I've sort of personally gone through three nuclear winters when it comes to virtual and augmented reality from the time I started researching on this field, which was like say 2014. And one of the things which I've noticed is you're right? From a timing perspective, I do not think you're in the Goldilocks zone just. And what do I mean by this? Uh, I think there is work to be done on hardware, software, and content, like I spoke. But the part to take heart on is think of cycles of innovation in virtual reality and the metaverse previous to this. And by the way, this technology has existed from something called the Sword of Damocles in the 1960s to the 1990s, where Nintendo did Virtual Boy, to like the early 2000s, where there was something called Second Life. And then the first half of this decade, where you sort of had Oculus being bought by Facebook, but like an exceptionally powerful Kickstarter campaign before that, right? Like I backed the DK one when it was out there. Then they got bought by Facebook, and Facebook has been backing them for 8 years right now, right? Like in terms of where they're at. So it's taken a while, right? Let's be sure of that. The reason why there is a lot more to be optimistic on this time around is there is at no point of time in the past you've had mainstream adoption of metaverse PR, right? Or stunts in the metaverse. What do I mean by that? Is brands, businesses, and enterprises want to leverage on the metaverse a lot more sharper, precisely, and with specificity than ever before. What this has also resulted in is developer activity on top of the metaverse, which is exceptionally high. We are probably at all-time highs in terms of the kind of developers that it's attracting, the kind of companies and traditional capital that it's attracting, and the big tech, which is the Meta and the Microsoft, backing this right now. Why is big tech backing this? They're at $2 trillion in market cap, right? Where do they go for the next $1 trillion? You have maxed out on smartphones, you've maxed out on office subscriptions, you've maxed out on Windows. You need to find the next device category in order to effectively sell to the audience. So there is a shareholder value or a shareholder pressure to go identify the next category. Now, why is more capital coming into this ecosystem? Is because crypto is taking off, is because the blockchain is taking off. And why are developers and product managers coming into this? Is because you see momentum that is starting to build a lot more than ever before. Now, what this will result in is two cycles of innovation faster than what typically would have happened in AR, VR, and the metaverse so far. Now, by virtue of this accelerated speed, when you look back, and you look at the y-axis, right, in terms of, hey, why should I believe it this time around? Maybe that's a wonky answer. But when you look from here to the slope of innovation or the acceleration in terms of how quickly are we getting to the next desired outcome, I think it is so high that it's probably at like say 90 degrees, right? Like that's how crazy things are moving at this point. So historical is probably a very poor indicator as compared to velocity, right? And that velocity has probably been scary good this time, and hence we should take a lot of solace from that. The second part is the technology good enough? Not yet, right? But think of this. Your smartphone today actually has a A15 Bionic or a A15, A16 this year in terms of a chip that Apple will launch, and an M1 powering your laptop. There is so much computing power in that is actually headroom. What is headroom is your apps can't even actually throttle your process, like take your processor to 100% capacity today. So why is Apple and why are companies building that much headroom into processing? It is because just like the way your AirPods are becoming an accessory to your smartphone, your glasses will become an accessory to your smartphone. Imagine a world where your watch, your AirPods, and your glasses all work together in synchrony in order to give you a really cool experience. But your smartphone is like that one hub which is doing all the computing and the processing which is needed to stream that data here. So when I look around, all the data that is being shown here is being processed by the U1 chip that is already present in your devices, and a lot of the sensory data is coming from your Apple Watch. And a lot of the spatial data in terms of how you hear the world is coming from your AirPods. Your AR, VR devices and your gateway to the metaverse is not a completely new device that is out there that's going to take you away from your smartphone, but will most likely be a companion to your smartphone that you can wear, that is going to use your smartphone's extra processing ability to make it small, cheap, light, and probably something that's available in the early $1,000 mark in order for you to wear and start accessing that through. Or such is the rumors right now as we speak. And that is why people are taking a lot of optimism to this, saying the AirPods business today is like in the Fortune 500 if you just take AirPods out, right? Like that's how big it is. And imagine a glasses business that can come out with it as well. So that's the kind of opportunity that it can unlock.
Awesome. Hopefully
Awesome.
it becomes a reality soon.
Yeah, sure.
And Abhay, do you want to take the
Yes.
next one?
Yes, yes, yes. It is also an interesting and one of the most upvoted question of the session. So, I mean, metaverse is currently the focus of big tech, all the big techs right now. The question that most of the people have is why are so many metaverse exist? For example, there is a one internet. There is no multiple internets available.
Right.
Then why are so many metaverse available? Is the case going to remain the same? Let's say 10 to 15 years down the line, we'll always have multiple metaverses being built, or it will be a common, say, infrastructure or something that everyone is going to get agreed on and built on top of it.
It's an amazing question here, to be honest. Uh, love how the parallel or the comparison to the internet started. So let's look back at why the internet was successful, right? Like the internet itself was successful because the military literally willed it into existence, right? Like at a protocol level, the government basically almost had a semi mandate that this is how you're going to have protocol levels built out. POP3 as an email service was basically thrust into existence. HTML was built without any resistance, right? Like the internet previous to this was militarized, or basically innovation came through from the military, and also was at a point where there were thin protocols and fat applications, which is the protocol makes no money. The guy who made a JPEG makes no money. The guy who made POP3 makes no money. The guy who made HTML makes no money. But the applications on top of this make all the money. Superhuman has nothing to do. Superhuman probably does not even run their own mail service, let alone POP3, right? But it's a company that's $500 million. And that's because the app makes all the money. Gmail makes all the money. JPEGs don't make the money, but Instagram makes all the money. Now, in Web3, that logic is actually flipped. You have fat protocols and thin applications. The protocol is really what is the premium, right? You lock all your money on the protocol because that's really the token that the chain sort of has in existence. What this means is you have effectively created a winner takes all market, or a winner takes most market at least. So it's a bloody fight, right? A Web3 company in the metaverse realizes that in the long run, only a few of these are truly going to thrive and survive. And the ones which thrive and survive are almost the gateway into doing anything from recreational, productive, or commerce fronts on what you guys are going to be up to at an avatar level. The big tech companies operate a slightly different agenda because they're not tokenized, right? Because they're not tokenized, their agenda is more about owning the stack. Facebook is perhaps sorely cross about itself that they don't own the mobile stack. So Apple can squeeze it out with notifications and updates to iOS 15 where the business bleeds. And Facebook does not want to miss the next hardware product. That's going to be what the next billion people use. And hence they've been backing Oculus for 8 years. Microsoft does not want to miss what productivity will look like in the metaverse because their bread and butter is about uh, products and services that they make things that help you make things, right? And that narrative is Office centric and Windows centric and Azure centric in the 2D world, but will be far more Minecraft centric, Azure Spatial Anchor centric, and God knows what other product from Activision, Blizzard, and their $70 billion acquisition centric that they can build out in the metaverse world. And because Microsoft has such a huge gaming bet that they've been making recently, the natural extension to making a $70 billion acquisition into a $500 billion acquisition is to make it a metaverse company. So there is top-down shareholder value that is brought in, and bottoms-up desperation that you don't want to miss the enterprise adaptation of the next evolution of the internet. Now, with someone like an Apple, it's a lot more logical, right? In terms of, look, I create categories of devices: the iPhone, the iPad, the Apple Watch, the AirPods. What is my next category of devices, right? And that pressure in terms of category creation is important, because even to this day, the iPhone accounts for more than 53% of Apple's profits and revenues. And that's because that one category they created 15 years ago has kept them going. So if Apple's got to increase from a $2 trillion, $3 trillion company to a $5 trillion company, the only logical path is to not make a faster iPhone or a better looking iPad or a more expensive Mac Studio, which are all going to make money. But the next incredible unlock of growth comes from the next category of devices that you're going to launch. And hence, when you see the big tech companies traditionally operate here, they either come at it from a cloud computing can explode standpoint, they come at it from a new category of hardware standpoint, or they come at it from a desperation that I don't want to lose control or ever give away control at a hardware level standpoint, which is their motivators. While for a Web3 metaverse company, the motivations mostly along the token is going to be a winner takes most market. This means that everyone's fighting it out right now, and there are 100 adaptations of what the metaverse is. In the long run, hopefully, again, this part is a little bit of hope more than anything, is there will be interoperable standards which make it ridiculously simple to go from one 3D world to the other. And if these interoperable standards exist, it should be fairly simple for us to go after. But we've been disappointed in the past about these parts. But what you would see is 1 to 3 platforms effectively like iOS, Android. It'll be a duopoly or a limited number of platforms that inevitably see it through, and a lot of the applications to be built on top of that fabric to sort of really engage with right now. Today, every company wants to build their own metaverse, because if they succeed, it's asymmetrical risk, right? The limited downside is that my effort failed, but there is unlimited upside if this actually comes good. And hence, every company is attempting to make a bet in terms of building their metaverse strategy.
Awesome. What an amazing answer. Someone in the chat is saying even my grandma would understand metaverse if Sai explains it. Fully in line with that thought, and fantastic answers, Sai. One recurring question that I'm seeing here is how can someone, so there are clear pathways to say a crypto future, a Web3, a DeFi, right? These spaces have a clear pathways for someone who wants to get started, right? If someone wants to get started building for the metaverse, right, or maybe start contributing towards this future, right? What are some practical ways that, suppose I'm a fresher right now, I'm someone who's starting out my career, right? And my big bet is that metaverse is going to be 100x or 1000x of what it is right now. How can I practically get started in this space?
The simplest answer is you never learn what crypto and the metaverse is about, you live it, right? And the reason I say that is, don't go by the textbook. There is no textbook. There's no playbook here, right? There is no Lenny San who will probably tell you a Twitter thread which is genuinely insightful about what needs to be done from a product front. Everyone's figuring it out. If someone comes to you and tells you that they're a Web3 expert or a metaverse expert, run, right? Like nobody is. We're all figuring it out. We're all blind leading the blind. And some of us have existed in this space longer than the others. That's it. And just learn to live what you are attempting to solve for. What do I mean by that? Is if you're a grad, fire up your MetaMask, go out there, don't even buy land right now. Just log into some of these platforms and thrive, right? Like exist, like understand the rule of the land, understand why the hell is this a deal in the first place. Spend time
Any
across
platforms
VR.
that you would suggest, Sai, like you
For sure.
mentioned? If not for land, any other platforms? Yeah.
Right. So spend time across VR chat, spend time across Decentraland, and spend time across Sandbox. These are the more decentralized platforms out there. Now, if you want to go after slightly more centralized platforms, hop into the office. We have plenty of Oculus Quests. Put them on and go into something called Facebook Horizon. Horizon is actually the most well thought through platform right now because it is from a company as large as Facebook, and you get a real scene of how a VR device with controllers and like hand controls, and how you're able to bobble around these multiple spaces, chat with someone, engage in something meaningful, and go after that, go after like deep social interaction in that sense. So if you guys have a VR headset, nothing like it, right? Like start using Facebook Horizon on a daily basis. If you don't, just jump into Spatial. Spatial.io is one of these platforms. The second is Decentraland. The third is Sandbox. But that's more to understand the crypto side of the fence as such. If you want to just understand a fun metaverse platform that like people spend a lot of time in, try something called Rec Room and VR Chat. And these are two fun social activities that you can go after, and you can do something quite interesting.
Awesome. Abhay and I recently got a Oculus Quest, and we should definitely check out Facebook Horizon. But the first impression was like, this is mind blowing. This something else. We have never experienced something like this. And with what you said, I think that seems more apparent in the future. So even if you don't have a Oculus Quest, just check out the platforms that Sai mentioned. And I think what he spoke about was super essential, right? Just go and hang out in these spaces. You'll automatically start seeing more. You'll dive into a rabbit hole and discover more stuff, right? So, yep. Abhay, want to take the
Yeah.
next one?
Yeah. So basically, there are multiple, I'll say, moving parts in this entire metaverse ecosystem. So one, as you mentioned, is the computing power and how better we can improve. Other is the hardware side of things, and the third, I will say, is probably also the entire blockchain slash Web3 side of things. So how do you think all three of this impact the current progression in the metaverse? Which one of you, I mean, which one of three you think, if let's say accelerate faster, then the adoption of the metaverse, let's say, will move from 8 million people from the Oculus to, let's say, 100 million people in the quickest of the time?
For sure. Super interesting one. Yeah. Like you said, I think there is no one answer or one magic bullet that is going to get us the hockey stick just yet. But if you were to look at areas that need more activity, why has the metaverse picked up so much more activity in the last 12 months as compared to any other time in the past? It's because there's real money associated with it now, right? Like people are flipping these land parcels and making a killing. People are flipping NFTs and making a killing. And NFTs, and a lot of these NFTs hold tremendous promise, or their true potential is unlocked only when the metaverse itself as a vision comes into existence, right? Like otherwise, the JPEG argument is a lot stronger, right? So now in that scenario, what you have done effectively is you have brought in a financial economy to an innovation class that has not existed before, right? Like nobody's bringing a financial economy on top of clean tech. Nobody's bringing in a financial economy on top of 3D printing, right? Nobody's bringing in financial economies on top of biodegradable cutlery that your food delivery startup is giving. That's why you don't hear more about it. But the moment the metaverse had that, holy smokes, there's real money involved in this, right? And hence, the kind of speculation also went from tech optimism to absolute gambling, right? In terms of people who might have not used the metaverse at all, starting to buy land, hold on to it, and flip it at crazy margins, right? Like for just for like reference, when Facebook changed itself to Meta, all these metaverse platforms increased by as much as say 126% in terms of token premiums. Is everyone out there who's buying the token buying it because they truly believe in the decentralized future that platform is bringing in? Maybe not, right? They're buying it because the longer story now adds up, and there is a financial participation around that. So already the financialization of the metaverse has meant that more people have gotten involved in it, and more people wanted to succeed than ever before. The second part is in order for us to really crack this, right? The obvious answer is perhaps more Web3 access, right? Like Web3 becomes like your Trojan horse in order to making the metaverse successful. But a slightly more left field answer is display optics, like the way the killer thing that's going to unlock electric cars is better battery technology, right? Similarly, the unglamorous part of what the metaverse is this: the lenses that you're using in order to show content. Today, these lenses require a lot more work in terms of photonics, as we call it as, in order to make them better and in order to make them great carriers of light, right? What do I mean by that is one reflection of light in your holographic displays, etc., means that the light is lost by more than 90% even before it reaches the next reflection. And it reflects at least 4 or 5 times before it hits your eye, which means that there is a incredibly bright light that's coming here, which is more than like say 5,000 nits, which is like 5 times as bright as your laptop. But by the time it hits your eye, it's actually like super dim and dull, right? Like this is from an augmented reality perspective. So in order to improve this, we require better lenses, both for virtual reality and augmented reality. It's like that kind of technology uh, which is like the batteries operating an electric car. Everything about an electric car is glamorous, but the battery technology really requires a revolution in order to make it a ubiquitous piece, right? Similarly, once you're able to crack photonics as a category, you would very quickly see that the rest of the problems here in terms of compute access, Web3 UX, experiences all start falling in place like a lot quicker, right? And some companies are really at it. I think we are a little while away from a killer photonics innovation in order to get us there. In the meantime, we're going to have a lot of work that your pass-through headsets where you have cameras and then camera collects the information and shows it on an LCD or an LED screen here. That becomes like the way that we access the metaverse first. But eventually, imagine like retinal projection that's going to make this a lot easier as we move forward. But that's very science fiction. I'm really rabbit holing here. But if there is one piece of technology that gets us to 1 billion people adopting this, I think photonics is really the core part to crack.
Awesome. I think one of the most supported questions was around interfaces. So I think you pretty much summed it up around photonics and all the new innovation that is about to happen. Even Mark Zuckerberg in one of the podcasts with Lex Friedman, he mentioned that the Oculus needs to be at least 10 times lighter, if not more, right? Something like that
Truly.
would enable mass adoption and bring the technology to a lot more people. So something you also touched upon the use cases part a bit. What are some core common use cases that we do, right? Like this session probably, right? Or maybe meetings, or maybe video calls or stuff like that, right? What are some common use cases that you think will be the first ones to help us transition into the metaverse, right? What are some common things that we do in the current internet era, or Web2 as we call it, uh, will transform to Web3? How do you think about that? And you have been in the space for almost 8 years now. You have seen it evolve from different particular stages. What do you think about the next maybe a couple of years?
Very interesting, yeah. In the same order of priority, I would think adrenaline highs and ahas. What do I mean by that? Is the first thing that's really going to get you excited about the metaverse is pure adrenaline, which is the first time you wear it, you're like, holy smokes, my brain's basically tricked into believing that I'm in a place that I'm not. And the games that you play on top, if they're able to evoke a visceral response, right, almost an emotional curve of like of joy, despair, almost like what our old gaming titles did, right? Like when you played Diablo, when you played Warcraft, you had a very emotional attachment to these gaming franchises and titles. And if you're able to do that at a metaverse level, right? Like the first touch points for at a device when you pop it in and the properties that you end up playing, if you sort of have that kind of recall and adrenaline, that's an incredible way for you to start your metaverse journey. The moment you start that, it then comes on to the hellos and the highs, which is the social fabric on top of which the metaverse is built. The metaverse is inherently social, even though it's also seeming very isolated, right? Like if you and I are sitting in the same room, maybe wearing a headset seems a dorky thing to do. But if you and I are sitting in completely different parts of the world, the most logical way for us to bond is perhaps through a social fabric in the metaverse. And hence, a lounge like what we have on screen here would have actually been exceptionally powerful in the metaverse right now as we speak, with everyone having access to headsets and ways in order to jump in and spend time on what's going on. So that is the social fabric. So we start with the adrenaline, then you come to the social fabric, and then you sort of push through to self identity, right? Like what do you wish for yourself in order to be represented as in the metaverse? Let's remember that the metaverse actually offers an opportunity in order for you to get a little funky with respect to the way you throw yourself online, right? Like we're back to the point where nobody on the internet knows you're a dog. Well, maybe everyone in the metaverse can know you're a dog, right? Like that is your avatar, that is your self-sovereign identity, right? Like that is really what you carry forward on a social fabric. So the identity stack starts to become like a very important part of who you are and how you are represented out there. So I could be pseudonymous, and my thoughts and my values could still be like resonating with this crowd here, and my avatar need not be anything like me, right? Like as I sort of start putting that through. So we then have the identity stack, and the last is possibly going to be things like commerce, where you're going to purchase and you're going to have things in the metaverse that's super important for your games that you are in the adrenaline side, and also for other things that you do from a learning side, right? Like you now then have real world use cases brought onto the metaverse. Like, think of your smartphone, right? When in 2007, when your smartphone launched, a lot of this was what we call as skeuomorphic, which is things that have worked in the offline world that I'm bringing to the smartphone. Right? We went from skeuomorphism to fully native digital products on your smartphone only after a certain point of time. Now, in the metaverse, you will start with skeuomorphic use cases. A classroom will look like a classroom that you went to school to, even though it has no reason to look like a classroom, right? A lounge will actually look like a lounge. And a concert hall can possibly actually mimic a concert hall, right? And the, there will be a point where people will mimic what is going on in your offline world and try to build that in the metaverse. After some time, people will realize, wait a second, why am I doing everything that the offline world was doing, right? Like I can think of a bunch of things which are a lot easier, right? Like the way if I go through shopping in a grocery store and look at an aisle, I mean, you don't need to do that in your smartphone, right? You have a 2x2 grid, and you swipe on the grid, and you're able to buy something. You will then have completely metaverse native experiences and metaverse native use cases that start to be built. But for us to get there, we're going to start with adrenaline, social fabric, identity fabric, commerce, and education, and then completely digital or metaverse native use cases that start to stem out from skeuomorphism.
Absolutely. Hopefully, we'll have the next one in the metaverse in a setting like that, fully immersive for everyone.
For sure,
Uh,
yeah.
Abhay, want to take the next one?
Yep, for sure. One thing is coming, and I saw about like 4 5 questions around this. Is it necessary or is it required that metaverse should be built on decentralized or let's say on a blockchain? Can companies like Meta or other big techs cannot build without the use of the blockchain? And if they can or cannot, what are the pros and cons to it generally?
Sure thing. Super interesting. And the answer is no, right? Like, which is today you can build a completely sovereign world out there and call it a metaverse, and it need not have anything to do with decentralization right now as we speak. The problem with that is that's not a metaverse as much as it's a virtual world, right? Like these are different things. And what do I mean by that? A metaverse is inherently open, interconnected, and has ways for you to transfer and bring in things that you truly own, right? So the moment it comes or becomes about ownership, transfer, bringing in, bringing out, which is what the internet is about, which is what the metaverse is about, uh, you then automatically realize that decentralization is a great way to unlock that value, right? So decentralization is a tool, a lever that you use in order to go from a virtual world to a metaverse, right? For all you know, Facebook can probably build a really good virtual world and say, look, I'm Facebook. I don't honestly care enough about decentralization for me to enable those features. But here's a virtual world. If you want to bring your NFTs in, I can probably allow you for some restricted access to that. But that's about it. And companies at huge scale can perhaps get away with doing that. But I think there is a world where, as much as a big Web2 company might end up making a virtual world with some degree of interconnection, you will probably have a completely open movement on the other side where multiple worlds can end up speaking, talking, and sort of interlinking between each other with a common set of shared rules, protocols, and like sort of reference points in terms of how things, goods, money, items are supposed to move between each other. And thereby, that becomes a metaverse as compared to the world in itself. You can build a really nice, fancy virtual world, which is what Roblox and Fortnite are. But building a metaverse really means that you got to play nice and open up, much like what the internet is. Now, I see a world where both will coexist for some amount of time before people realize that you don't need to fully decentralize, but you don't need to become a tokenized company. But you need to have the features that allow you to plug in to the larger open metaverse that is out there, so that all the things that I just mentioned can sort of become interoperable in some nature or the other. So, is decentralization required in some format to realize the metaverse? Absolutely. Um, is it a must as you get started? Maybe not, right? Like you can build a virtual world and then eventually add Web3 features to it and then sort of make that metaverse compatible in its own right.
Yep, absolutely. And Sai, a lot of non-tech people have joined in. So maybe by non-tech, I mean apart from developers, of course, everything is tech now. But apart from developers, there are designers, marketers, writers, researchers, and whatnot, right? If they want to get involved in this space, right, what would you suggest them to do? Are there any resources they should check out? Should they get a deeper understanding about the space? What are the best ways they can get involved in this space if they are not a developer, right? So,
Right.
what are your thoughts on that?
Again, like very relevant. And I would say that if you're not a dev or if you're not a programmer, the opportunities in the metaverse are actually better and higher. And the reason I say that is when you're sort of building on a metaverse platform, the tech guy is purely focused on building the core underlying rails in order to get someone there. But think of the kind of rules that exist now in your digital world that have never existed in the past. A community manager was a non-existent role before 2007, right? Like, or not even 2007. Like, a social media manager didn't really exist till Facebook became a big deal. Um, Managing Discord is not even like something that was probably a big part of the consideration at that point. Like a UI UX designer for mobile interfaces didn't exist back then. A number of things evolved out due to the kind of revolution that we saw in social and mobile. Similarly, when the metaverse comes in, if you're a designer, imagine you're an architect, right? Today, the metaverse says buy land and do build something on top of this land so that more people come to your attraction, and hence you're able to tokenize this in some way. Cool, but who's going to build this, right? Like, where is the architect equivalent of a metaverse, right? Like, who's out there? Because I bought land, I paid like 10 ETH in order to buy land. I need to build something on that land to attract more metaverse people in order to just come in and spend time there, right? Like, if that doesn't exist, it's a barren space. You're not going to go out there to the outskirts of Bangalore and just stare at barren land, right? You're going to go to a mall, you're going to go to an attraction, you're going to probably go to, say, socials. So when these are sort of the narratives that are in place, or these are sort of the expectations in place, what does a designer do, right? What does an architect do? What does a community manager in a metaverse do? How do I engage people in order to come into a shared 3D persistent space and stop troubling others, right? What is the set of rules that can typically be set in order to help make this an engaging discussion as much as this one is? Uh, the kind of jobs and roles that might unlock in the metaverse are ones we probably don't even know enough about right now. So step one is whatever you're doing in your career path, right? Take a pause and see what a metaverse equivalent of that can be like. If you're managing social media, how do you manage a 3D space? If you're an architect, how do you build out a 3D how do you build out 3D attractions? If you are a simple UI UX designer, how do you build out metaverse spaces which are going to have on ramps, which are the simplest way that someone can get started with? If you're a content writer, how do you spin out story, lore, and reasons why people should come and spend some much of their time in a digital space like this? The more you think about it, the more your role right now has just the same amount of potential, if not more potential, in a completely realized virtual space that we might end up spending time in. The second part is the moment you realize that there is a possibility to do that, backtrack, right? Like, check out where might be good spots for you to attempt to do this, right? Like, you need a playground, right? Like, the metaverse is a virtual space, but what if you had a playground in order to go and experiment in this virtual space in the first place? I think a few places offer very cool playgrounds in order for you to go get started. Um, for all, actually, for that matter, Cope is probably a playground in a lot of senses, right? Like Cope's a moonshot factory that's present inside Polygon in order to build out super ambitious bets. Think about it as a Skunkworks, a Google X, an Area 120 that exists in order to specifically build out bold, fairly audacious, and slightly newer bets in terms of what needs to get out there. Find a playground. It can be Cope, it can be any other sort of Web3 org that wishes to experiment in the space. It can be a collective of people who sort of come together in order to make that happen. But find your calling, a playground where you're able to jump in, experiment, have fun, and while you're doing those, identify how your role can logically evolve out in the metaverse in the first place. I think it's a little bit of a litmus test from the standpoint of how creative you can think, but a lot more in terms of just an exercise that I truly think will have non-linear results if you spend enough time attempting to do this. Find the right playground and dunk right in and try to see if you can have fun while at that.
Absolutely. And
Amazing.
yeah, the developers will build the metaverse, but someone's got to sell it. So lots of marketers, sales folks need it for sure. A lot of it is super relevant, like Sai mentioned. And yes,
Yep.
I think we are right at the brink of time. But Abhay, do you want to chip in a last question for Sai?
Yep. There are a couple of questions on the non B2C interaction side also. People are asking what are the use cases for the B2B organizations to get involved in the metaverse? Because majority of what you see right now, majority of the application, majority of the companies building for metaverse are building it for direct access to people, something of a more sort of a B2C. So, are there going to be any sort of a B2B use cases also, or there already exist some sort of those use cases already?
For sure. From a B2B side, I think a lot of the tooling, infra, and things that you need to build will start to become so important for B2C companies as well as any effective company to do something cool there. Think of chat, right? Like think of text-based chat. How does a keyboard look like when you are present in a virtual environment? How does a chat interface look like? How do you effectively sort of build a chat layer on top of any game, any application that you sort of typically do? Think of SaaS products that can be built like this, right? How do you have effective micro animations in terms of loading up 3D spaces? How do you have rendering engines that are able to take care of a lot of the load and compute in the scenario that you're a B2C company doing most of this out there? How you a cloud computing provider that can have enough good APIs in order to mint a bunch of NFTs as well as land parcels so that the next metaverse B2C company that is coming in can, in a flip of a switch, sort of go from idea to a metaverse platform very quick and sort of move it forward. What does the Shopify for metaverse look like? What if, not from a commerce perspective, but if I want to have a white labeled metaverse that is going to get out there and do something, how do I spin one up very quickly with a theme and with a template that I can get out there? I think B2B perhaps is incredibly undertapped right now, and something that I think we can spend a lot more time on riffing at a infra level, at a platform level, and at a SaaS level in terms of you attempting to build specific things in the identity stack, the compute stack, or the rendering stack that can become like super useful for people to sort of pick up and start using. A good wallet, right? A good crypto wallet inside a virtual environment does not exist today, right? Like that's how early we are, right? So what does a normie friendly wallet look like inside a virtual space when I'm wearing a VR headset? How does a crypto wallet work? How do I execute a transaction? How do I pull in an NFT from my crypto wallet in order to then view it in the metaverse, etc.? These are exceptionally frictionless processes right now, right? So if I look at a B2B side, uh, I think SaaS perhaps is the best poised here to take customer support, to take areas of the metaverse which can be like specific to something that dispute resolution, chat interfaces that need to be built through bots that need to be present across the metaverse in order to guide you to doing something or the other. Those B2B use cases start to become exceptionally important in order to envision that sort of a world that we want to exist in, and a lot of that is perhaps something that's worth dwelling a tremendous amount of time on.
Yep. Completely makes sense.
Awesome. I think we have tons of questions, but I would reserve that for you to go and ask to Sai on his Twitter, LinkedIn. Please go follow him on Twitter. He's super active there. and otherwise also. But thanks so much, Sai. Thanks for the fantastic session today. Personally, we have hosted so many sessions so far, but personally, my favorite. I could be biased, but personally, my my favorite, and the audience seems to be agreeing with this. Felt like one of our late night jamming sessions. Thanks for keeping it so real, so candid, and that is how everyone understands it so well. Would love for you to talk a bit more about Cope Studio and the amazing work that you are doing. By the way, folks, a lot of we are going to collaborate with Cope and ship out a bunch of things for the product house as well. So watch out for that. But I'll let Sai share more about the amazing work they are doing and how you could join them. Yeah.
Yeah, Adi, thanks a ton. Yeah, but first up for the audience, right? The ones who've stuck around at little over 9:30 on a Wednesday evening. This is romantic and then some. So thanks for being an exceptional patient listening to what is otherwise a slightly tricky topic to explain out. So I've had a lot of fun trying to do this. The second part is what if we do this on a daily basis, right? Like, what if we wake up and we play games, spend time in the metaverse, and just absolutely go batshit crazy about what are the possibilities in this world that we're building out 24/7. That's really what I'm attempting to build out here at Cope, right? Which is, like I said, a moonshot factory at Polygon, which is probably the biggest crypto story to get out of India and Asia in a long time, and have a rocket ship. And in that rocket ship, perhaps be that one cylinder that really looks at what is 10 years down the line or what is 5 years down the line and attempt to at least start building some of those foundational pieces right now. It's a team of more than 40 odd developers, designers, engineers, marketers, as well as 3D folks and artists who are all like a motley crew that have come together. And our goal is to pick up something that is outrageous out there and try to see if we are the right team in order to go about solving for that process. So think of what Google X is to Google, right? Like setting a balloon up in the air in order to solve for internet connectivity, making cars drive themselves out. Think of challenges that are exceptionally deep, exceptionally tough, and very daunting. But perhaps a team that wants to back themselves and start attempting to solve it in Web3 to the trenches and to really have a lot of fun while in that process is really what we are attempting to build Cope out to do. Now, to that, we are hiring and hiring quite like crazy. So, if you're a product manager, if you're a marketing person, if you're a salesperson, a designer, if you have a pulse and you're alive and you're in this call, apply it, right? Like because this is going to be a lot of fun for us to, possibly discuss and go through. And for any one of you, if you're doing your first transaction on Matic, consider that on me. So let's have some fun trying to purchase a couple of NFTs, spend and dunk you into what a metaverse platform is going to be about and anything else that you might need in order to come through to the office, work from here with a bunch of Web3 founders, please feel free to do so. And if there is ways, formats, and manners where your proximity to a moonshot factory like Coop can be even greater, I think the details will be with Adi and the product folks, where we are anyways doing a bunch of super cool things with them leading up to the product house, and would be very fun in order to see if the cohort and the quorum, which is super interested at 9:30 on a Wednesday, can also be a part of this journey as we move it forward. So we're hiring, and we're hiring actively. Apply through if you want to be a part of a journey where a lot of things we do might not pan out, but the ones which do are possibly some of the biggest outcomes that can happen on change.
Absolutely, absolutely. And folks, Sai and his team are one of my favorite teams to work with, hands down. And please do check out the link that
As
Ayush has
I
pinned. I'm
mentioned,
also,
I
yeah,
think even if you do not want to join Europe, and if you are still deciding whether to join or not, just go to their office, hang out, maybe hang out in the Facebook Horizon for a bit, maybe just play a game in the Oculus Quest, and then have a chat with Sai and all the team members that are working there. Super cool.
absolutely. Showing the link on stage just so it's easier for everyone. Check out this link if you find any role interesting, and if you want us to put you in touch with the team, happy to refer as always. And highly, highly recommend you check out Hope.studio, which is their link. Do check that out. And Sai's Twitter handle is also in the chat. So please make sure you follow him there. Give a shout out if you like the session, which I definitely know you did. So thanks so much. Thanks again, Sai, for taking your time on a Wednesday
You guys
evening
have been
to
the
chat with.
most fun and patient listeners. So thank you. Thank you for having me in on this one, guys.
Yeah, and
Awesome. Thanks. I
also
will stick
also
around
thanks
for
to
a
people on
bit. Yeah,
YouTube. I think we at
yeah,
the session start we had 100 people, and I'm seeing right now 102 people are still there at the
yeah.
end of the session. Special thanks to all of you on the YouTube also. Yeah.
Yeah, 100 people on YouTube and couple of thousand people watching live on AirMeet now.
Absolutely.
So thanks everyone for joining in. Can't appreciate you enough, and thanks for showing so much love on the session. Was constantly seeing like
Reactions.
fanboying like us for Sai. So really appreciate you all
And
joining in and liking the
definitely
session.
other there was some personal question also, Sai, by the way. People were curious about your age and everything. I'll appreciate you going to the Cope's office. Don't ask Sai's age for sure, but do ask him what are the good dosa places to eat around nearby the Cope office. And
That for
For
sure.
sure,
also,
yeah.
yes, exactly. And what are Sai's favorite movies and what also he likes to do other than the metaverse in real world. Yeah.
What do you do on weekends, Sai? Maybe that could be a good icebreaker for everyone.
Yeah.
In the weekends, I'm mostly busy hunting down where Suhas is, but that's a more difficult answer than most. But when I'm not doing that, is perhaps finding out another dosa place or two.
So we share the same hobby then, and and yeah, Sai has just born in the metaverse, so he's just started out in the metaverse. He's a teenager probably there, and he's absolutely 10 years younger than whatever your guess is. So don't even try to guess it. So yes,
I'm uh,
awesome,
I'm glad.
awesome,
Like
Sai.
the lucky
Yeah.
part is, like I said, no, nobody on the internet knows you're a dog, and nobody in the metaverse can even guess you're one as long as you choose the right avatar. But thank you so much for coming in, guys. Honestly, it's been an absolute blast. But see you guys on the other side, possibly at the office, or even more useful, perhaps inside a virtual reality headset. And I would promise a good dosa if you're here and a good game if you're in a VR headset.
Fantastic. Sai will let you go for the evening now, but
Cheers,
amazing
everyone.
time. We'll see you soon again. Thanks
Sign
again.
off in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah,
Bye, guys.
bye. Awesome, folks. Hope you liked it. Abhay and I are here for a minute or two. If you have any question, where is the office? If you can go to the office, please reach out to us and we'll make sure we'll
Sure.
facilitate that.
You can DM Sai, you can DM Cope Studios also on the Twitter. Their office is located in Bangalore. If you're in Bangalore or planning to visit, you can DM and set up some meetings, set up how to reach there, and their team will for sure help you.
Yep, folks, how was the session? I could see so much enthusiasm, but did you like it? Please give a thumbs up if you like the
Yes.
session. Best session, most favorite session. Absolutely, absolutely. Totally agree there. And like I repeatedly said throughout the session, but Sai and his team are my favorite bunch to work with. Otherwise, also super smart folks working in the Web3 space. And if you are looking for a role, do check that out. The link is pinned in the chat here. I'll show it on stage again just so you can access it easily. But if you want a kickstart to your Web3 career, nothing like working with their team. So do check that out. And a lot of folks are asking about recordings. And like every time, if I had $1 every time someone asks for a recording, I'd be a, a millionaire
Well,
in Web3 terms. Lot of yeah, a lot of folks asking about the recording, but as usual, we'll be on YouTube for the next 2 days. We'll be on the LMS after the cohort. You'll have everything at your disposal. Don't worry. We are doing all of this just for the community. So it
and
is for you to
in case you
watch.
don't have access to let's say Notion knowledge base, or if you're not able to join the Discord, or in case you're also not receiving the regular emails that we send, feel free to DM us on our Twitter handle. 0xpph is the Twitter handle that we have. Just DM any of the queries that you have. And other I saw a couple of questions around what exactly the product house is going to do in the metaverse. What are the other initiatives lined up? I'll say ki, probably there are so many things already planned, so many things already moving. I'm not allowed to say it right now on this session, but you will feel excited. You will be really excited to know when we launch all of those initiatives, all of those new things that are coming up, only and only curated for all of you. And
Yep.
again, will once again say there is a bounty for this week for amount worth $500. If you like the session, go through the entire session, create a thread. It can be in terms of memes, it can be in terms of sketch notes, it can be in terms of pure learning insight that you had from the entire session. Tag 0xtph, tags Cope Studios, tags sign, and create a thread. We will be announcing the bounty winners for this after a couple of sessions next week. Yep. Thanks,
Absolutely,
Ganesh.
and we have a huge roadmap ahead. But folks, you'll be amazed by everything that we have in store for you. This is just the beginning. We are just enabling the initial foundation so that you get acquainted well with the Web3 terms. You understand what all the hype is about, right? You get the real deal. We are trying to bring in mentors, amazing mentors like Sai, who come and give us their time. So make sure you join in live on every session, right? That is how you get to interact with them, and you could see how patiently he answered all of our questions, right? So that is what our aim is with all the mentors. But you'll be blown away by everything that we have in store for you. We are
For
here
sure.
to help
And
you
the
build the learning
new
layer.
new
Yeah,
surprise for this week, or at least for today, is the new mentor. Go to Twitter and guess who this person is going to be. You will
yeah.
be absolutely blown away by the announcement. We are planning to make the announcements most likely by end of this week. But do guess who that person is going to be. I will say the person is probably one of the best mentor slash best, I will say, someone who is absolutely been promoting the entire Web3 culture in the entire world, not only in India. So yeah, absolutely guess whom we are going to get on board for this, and you would not like to miss that session for sure.
Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg soon, folks. Soon, probably, probably in the next Web3 fundamentals, Elon Musk and Mark Zuckerberg as well, so that you get say Elon OP and Mark OP in the chat. But for now, still someone who's highly revered in the space, like
For
Abhay
sure,
shared,
and who has been
millions of
promoting
followers, and
Web3 Bitcoin for uh, quite a long time. I'll not say Web3, Metaverse, blockchain, crypto has been the terms who has been in the news for at least last 1 year. I'll say this person has been promoting it since ages, probably since last 10 years since it started. So very, very senior person in the ecosystem.
absolutely. And folks, that is for the closing session, but we have another session lined up for you tomorrow, right? We don't have a gap, but I'm sure you are excited to learn about the Web3 space. And tomorrow we are going to have a super exciting session lined up for you, same time, same place as always. So make sure you join in there. And for this session as well, take a lot of notes like Abhay shared, share it on Twitter, or tag OXTPH, Sai, Cope Studio, and everyone so that we'll get to see your threads. And as always, thanks for being such a sport in today's session. Really enjoy the backing and the love and support we get throughout this session. Wouldn't have been possible without all of you joining in. So, yeah, thanks for tuning in. Where do you want to share anything
Absolutely.
else, or should
Absolutely.
we
With
tune
this,
out
we
for?
can probably end the session. If you like the session, as always, just give a shout out to 0xDPH and the entire team on Twitter. This keeps us motivated to come here on each and every session and deliver more and more. And this also gives a huge boost to the speakers who have joined us specifically from their important time. Most of them are actually doing a very, very cool stuff, and them providing their valuable time specifically on most of them on weekdays or some of them on the weekends is also very, very difficult. Personally speaking, I'll say, at least for the example with Sai, uh, finding a time with Sai has been very, very difficult. Even any of us would have wanted this, but he directly agreed when we said we are doing this session with Web3 Fundamentals. So they are very, very generous in providing their time specifically for the community. So do give them a shout out.
Absolutely, folks. Been an amazing run so far, and we'll look forward to continue this again tomorrow. And we have some amazing sessions lined up for the next week as well.
For sure.
Before we close out with our guest mentor, but thanks. Have a great night, and we'll see you again tomorrow for the session. Hope you enjoyed it. And this is your host Aditya and
And
Abhay signing off from TPH. Bye bye. Take care.